Thank you for joining us and sharing your experience regarding fatherhood.
hmm
Usually, I ask why the listeners should stay tuned in, but today we do a different way.
Okay.
Um, yeah, we see your experience in your face, so the goal is clear to learn something new. What would you say is the central message from your fatherhood, from your experience?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Robert. I guess for me, the central message is quite simple. Unconditional love is the key. For me, children need to know that they're loved, not for what they achieve, not for who others expect them to be, but for who they truly are. Um, Certainly from my own experience and the work I've done with adults, I believe that many of the struggles, such as anxiety, addiction, perfectionism, imposter syndrome, and emotional distress, can often be traced right back to a lack of psychological safety in childhood. That's not to say parents have been bad. Parents are very well meaning, but ultimately, that tracing that lack of psychological safety is often the root cause. My own story, for example, taught me that when children feel that they must alter themselves to be accepted, and I use the words here very carefully, that they feel they must alter themselves, they can spend decades trying to become someone they were never meant to be.
Yeah.
So, in terms of recovering from that, it's about returning home to be your authentic self.
Yeah. So many terms.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. Authentic self is a very
Mm.
difficult one. Let me
It is.
just, from my perspective,
Mm-hmm.
I I've been thinking for almost 40 years that in my childhood I was being loved unconditionally.
Mm-hmm.
And then I became father and I figured out that my childhood was not so happy.
Mm.
How would you say could we, figure out if that was this conditional love or this unconditional love? Because from
Again,
my
yeah.
experience,
Mm.
subconsciously, 40
Mm.
years I was working, performing. I
Mm.
graduated two studies, two majors. I was, always searching for some
Mm.
new performing
Mm.
experience
Mm.
because subconsciously I was trying to, always perform to be loved because my
Mm.
parents, they loved me conditionally.
Mm. Yeah, I mean that again is they're all really good points. I mean, parenting and psychological safety. You know,
Yeah.
I don't think I don't think most parents set out. I would say most parents set out to be great parents. Let me rephrase that. Most
Yeah.
parents do the job of being a parent in their minds out of total love and total care. I would say my parents did exactly the same. The
Yeah.
challenge for parents, there's a number of challenges. One is what I call this kind of generational virus. So they can only parent based on how they were parented. Does that make sense?
Yeah. 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 It
Yeah.
makes sense. Virus is
Yeah.
very difficult, but I
Yeah.
understand
Yeah.
what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. And this could be one of two ways. They can parent because that's the way they were parented, or
Yeah.
I know people who've done the opposite because that parenting they believe was so bad for them. They thought it wasn't good.
Yeah.
I will say that people who've done the opposite of their experience of being parented can make great parents by default because they thought that wasn't good for me, so I'm now going to do it differently. Does that make sense
Mm.
as well? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, as I say, I have to emphasize that most parents, I think, come to work as a parent to do a great job.
Yeah.
One of the things, though, going back to this generational virus, and back to the parenting template they inherited, that will shape their beliefs and their behaviors and ingrain that pattern, not as a destructive pattern. It's the only thing they know. But if they've also experienced patterns of anxiety, criticism, perfectionism, emotional separation, this can be passed down subconsciously, to use your words, so they may, words like, I don't know, their values, be successful, be strong, don't show vulnerability, man up, a lot of fathers might say to their sons, for example, man up, that's because that's what they were told, and they believe they are giving something positive to their children. And by the way, some of that is positive, and I think it's a difficult balance because, obviously maintaining those boundaries, helping children to become resilient is important as well. And it's a very delicate balance, isn't it?
It's very difficult for me. It was difficult for me, even as an adult, to distinguish between, I was loved unconditionally and I was loved conditionally. And how would you say for the parents, if I'm a parent, what are the signs? What's happening with the children if they feel this conditional love? How can you help a father to recognize the wrong pattern?
Yeah, again, it's very difficult because if the child growing up, becoming a teenager, is wanting to, you hear it so many times, I want to do this because I want to please my parents, because I love my parents as well. I love my parents, and they love me. And for that love to perpetuate, I will do, for example, I will play football even though I prefer rugby, or I'll play rugby even though I prefer football. Do you know what I mean? I see this with my grandchildren, right? And not that they do tend to do what they really enjoyed, though. There is a difference there. And I think it is really tough for parents. And I think it's saying to the child, look, it's great. I love the fact that you love, for example, football. I'll give you a real example with my grandson. His father loves football, and he was like, yeah, Dad, I love football. And my grandson, very good at football. But when his mum said to him when he was getting ready to go to soccer practice, oh, you don't seem as excited. And he said, no, I like football. I like football. And she goes, and they sat down and paused with him and said, yeah, but your body language, you're kind of showing us you're not quite liking it as much. And he said, well, I'm really sorry. And they said, no, there's no need to apologise. He said, it's not that I don't like football, but I've really got into cricket. And guess what? He goes to cricket practice now every Sunday, and he loves playing cricket. And I know that's a simple example, but bringing in that pause. So it's not just listening to respond to the child, but listening to understand. And listening to understand means not just listening to what they're telling you, because they will tell you sometimes what you want to hear, because they want you to be happy as well.
And it's subconscious. It's subconscious.
Yeah.
They're just telling you. They don't think about it. It's not upon manipulation, because the children, they do not manipulate.
But read the body language. So when you're
that's the good one. Yeah.
Because I'll tell you what, when you see what I call an incongruence between, oh no, Dad, I love to go to football, but it's, yes, Dad, I love to go to football, and their eyes are dropped a bit and they're looking at something else and they're fiddling with something else. It's spotting that. It's not easy being a parent. It's really hard. I think it's the hardest job in the world.
Exhausting.
It's the hardest job in the world to be a parent, from what I've seen of my own stepchildren, and I think they do a great job, by the way. But it's when you see that incongruence in behavior, the incongruence is they're not rushing to put their kit together. Now, when my grandson now gets his cricket stuff together, he's already ready. He's got his uniform off, he's got his cricket gear on, he can't wait to go. He's a great footballer, by the way. He's a great soccer player. He's a great all-round sports young person. He loves cricket, and his father found that a little difficult, because he goes, his father's Australian. His father said, but you're so good at football. And it was his mum who said, yeah, but he prefers cricket, John. So let's let him play cricket. It's not as though he sat in his room going through his screen, scrolling and God knows what. He wants to do something. Let's celebrate that. And he enjoy his cricket. But it's that's very wise. Body language will give it away. That will give it away. Tone and body language always gives it away. So, communication is made up of words, tone, and body language. Make sure if they're all congruent, they all make sense. As soon as there's a bit of a mismatch, that's the point to pause, perhaps, and say, Let's just have a chat about this. A 6-year-old will have a chat about it. Yeah.
And still, from my perspective as a parent, the first step is to take a pause, take a break, and just watch your child.
Yeah.
Because we are so busy being busy, like without any, real sense of it. So some actions we do just doesn't make any sense. If I think about dealing with smartphone for 10 hours a day, it's difficult to stop and watch our children, watch the body language, which is not so easy to reading a book is easy for us because we learned it at school. We didn't learn at school what to do with body language and how to read it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct.
You're welcome. Your experience, your wisdom, they pay off.
Well, I'm still learning, by the way, Robert. I'm learning every day. I remain curious in a good way, I hope. Yeah.
It's also very important mindset. I want my children to also learn every day.
Yeah.
Richard, regarding your story.
Yes.
There was a feeling of being different.
Yes.
What did it feel like? How did you experience it? How did you live it out?
Yeah, it was, when I look back, oh God, it was so painful. I think I knew I was different to other boys from around the age of 4 or 5. Not all boys, by the way. I felt different. You have to bear in mind, though, because, your listeners will be thinking, well, the world is not like that as much today, but I'm talking about going to school in the late 60s, early 70s. It was a very different era. All the other boys, love football, cricket, sports, rough and tumble games. Nothing wrong with that. And I gravitated towards other interests. I liked playing with the girls. I loved acting. I loved, being on stage, all of that. I didn't understand about sexuality at that time. And I'm not saying the two go hand in hand, because I know lots of gay people who play football and, rough and tumble in a different way. We have gay rugby players now, but I was more inclined to away from that sort of, fighting and so on and so forth.
But you mean this female part?
Well, not being female, but certainly I found girls gentler to be around rather than boys. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah. And that difference obviously increased as I went into adolescence. And what I did, Robert, was to fit in, started to change how I came over. I used a deeper voice. I didn't cross my legs. I had girlfriends, lots of girlfriends. Yeah. I was quite good looking when I was younger as well, so I didn't have a problem dating. I put out of my mind the fact that, as I got into adolescence, as I say, of course, I realized I was attracted, and I found it abhorrent that I was attracted to men. Attracted to the same sex, and I thought that can't be right. That's going to disappoint me, everyone, my church. I was growing up, called a puff, pansy, all these words we use to people like that. And I thought, I'm not going to be one of those. So I'm going to, eventually get married, have a couple of children at least, a nice house, and, and we're going to,
the dog, garden.
Yeah. And I pursued relationships with women with vigor. I wanted to be perceived as not different. I wanted to be perceived as normal. And that takes its toll. It takes its toll on any human being, not just gay people, anyone who tries to be different to their authentic self, provided that authentic self isn't causing harm to society. Let me just put that caveat in, because we should have boundaries and so on and so forth. But that takes its toll, because you're trying to be something you're not, whatever that something is. Yeah.
May I ask you about the church? Because it was also in my story, there is a huge point of kind of, so I was wearing, or somehow I had this belief that I'm sexually awkward because of the church. My parents believed in in this, get married and get some children, and that was not the right way for me.
Right.
So how was your connection to the church?
Well, it was interesting.
Was your father in the church?
No, my parents, my mum was a Catholic. My dad became a Catholic. My dad was very supportive of my mum's faith. Yeah.
Yeah.
We went to church. I was raised as a Catholic, so I was baptized, had my Holy Communion, I was confirmed, all of
me
that.
the same.
Yeah. And I have a lot of respect and a lot of time for the church on all the good it does. I'm not anti-religious. I'm not religious now. I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. There's a difference for me. I have a higher power. I have
definitely.
a God of my own understanding. Right. I do believe the church does a lot of good. The church never said, the church didn't sort of abandon me. I abandoned the church, and I abandoned my faith for a long time because I decided that I didn't fit in with that and they wouldn't want me. They never said that. I decided that. So I'm going to be very honest here. The reason I say this is my mum still goes to church. My mum's 91, and her Catholic priest and I get on very well. And he actually says, when you come to church, Richard, you can come and have communion. And I said, I can't because I'm gay. And that's again, he said, no, the world has moved on. I will give you communion. And now I don't go. Yeah, I don't go. But he is a priest who says, no, we're all God's children and blah, blah, blah. I don't know whether he should be doing that or not. I do have faith in a God of my understanding, and I do pray and all the rest of it. So my relationship is with God, not a church. But I'm not anti-churches. I'm not anti-Muslim, anti-Christian, anti-whatever it is. Because whilst there are bad things have happened, I know they happen everywhere. I see that the church, all the different faiths have done a lot of good.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to emphasize right now, we are talking about our own experience, not criticizing any religion or any beliefs.
Well,
I've seen that my belief created by my parents, the constellation, my parents, the church, the Bible, that led to the wrong belief at the end. Because feeling sexually awkward is a wrong belief.
It is a wrong belief, and feeling that I was a sinner is a wrong belief too.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Because
all
of my
the time,
sexuality.
Yeah.
And that part of the church. So I perhaps I probably need to emphasize this. That part of religion, whether it's Catholic, Christian, whatever, Methodist, all the different denominations.
Yeah.
That part I see as wrong because it can cause children to think they are bad. It could cause teenagers and adults, and then so they're not being themselves, and they think they're bad people, and therefore they think they're not good enough, and that's a dangerous place to be for any child.
Yeah, it's very dangerous
for any child. I am not good enough is a really dangerous place to be for a child.
Yeah, and in Germany we see plenty of, for example, young girls hurting themselves, which for me as a father is a huge pain because it's coming up, and it's not just one person. Like you see the people at school, and your daughter is gonna go to that school, and you see those people with scars. On the body.
I'm finding it. I mean, I get parents coming to me about their children and that their teenagers are on antidepressants. More and more in the UK. I'm talking about here, not Germany.
Yeah.
In the UK, more and more children being put on antidepressants are seeing counsellors and so on. I don't think that is just faith. As the other thing that is a big issue for a lot of people with their well-being, besides not feeling good enough, is that they feel they compare themselves constantly to other people. Does that make sense? So I would just like to highlight, I'm not anti-technology, okay, Robert, but I do believe from the experience as a therapist, and just bear with me, as a therapist, that whilst technology is great, children are growing up in a very different world to the world I grew up in. And social media, while it is wonderful, it connects people, but it can also create this, what I call comparison anxiety and unrealistic expectations. And a lot of children now are looking at pictures of, like, girls are looking at pictures of models, say, or boys are looking at pictures of, young boys all buffed up, teenagers all buffed up, gym, and all that. And then they're comparing themselves, and then they are feeling not good enough. And they're getting that bombarded on their screen all the time. I will emphasize that technology has its place. It's fantastic. We're using it right now, Robert, you and I.
Definitely.
Yeah.
24/7.
We have to, but the like anything, when it becomes a staple diet, i.e. social media, looking at other people, looking at people in gyms, looking at people who are very slim, looking at people who are, very fit, they are comparing themselves more often than the days when I was a kid, when you just saw other kids or you saw them in magazines. It wasn't 24/7. From my own experience, what I love about my grandchildren is that they love spending time outdoors. They love being active. They love connecting face to face and developing what I call real world experiences. They are allowed to use technology, but it is restricted. And I will tell you, in the early days of those restrictions, they felt disenfranchised. They felt, well, wait a minute, all my friends can go on TikTok. Why can't I? An 8-year-old comes to you and all that. And I'm not knocking. I have to be careful. I'm not knocking parents who allow this. I'm just giving you information. And what I see with those kids that spend more time outside, they're happier. Their well-being is in a better place. They just, I posted on Facebook this morning, funnily enough, I've been for a run and I was all damp and sweaty. And I was saying, I'm not saying everyone should go out for a run each morning, but getting outside at some point in the day for 30 minutes at least is good for your well-being. It's good for children. Children are naturally love going outside and exploring. And I think this fear factor that came in the 90s about predators and so on, predators have always been there. I'm not suggesting just let a 3-year-old go out on their own, but kids need that to function, to be well, to learn, to explore. Sorry, I'm going off on one here, but I think too much screen time, too much of that. You wonder why they're harming themselves, why they don't feel good enough. That's your answer. A large part of it is that.
It's a good answer, It's good to have one answer, at least one answer.
Yeah. There are other reasons. Yeah, there are other reasons. There could be something to do with the parenting. It could be religion. It could be that. But the incidence of this, it's almost becoming a crisis with young people, It's what I call the silent crisis, the best kept secret at the moment, And I sometimes hear parents getting very defensive, saying, well, all their friends have got it. And I say, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, just encourage them to get out, to play those sports, to go out as a family. But the whole family, have you ever been to a restaurant and you see the whole family sat around the table on a phone? Have you ever seen that? Everyone sees it all the time, Yeah.
It happens, definitely.
It does happen, and it's a shame because they've all gone out, But anyway, I'll get off my high horse.
So, Richard,
yes,
you mentioned in the first conversation your boarding school that was a shaping experience for your development. Would you like to share something more about that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's interesting because people say, oh, he went to boarding school. That must have been the cause of a lot of his issues. I would like to say a little bit about it because it wasn't all about that.
For the German listeners, what is a boarding school?
Sorry?
For the German listeners, what is a boarding school?
A boarding school, yes. Sorry, a boarding school is a school you go to and you sleep there as well. You have your own rooms, dormitories, and I would stay there for 6 weeks, come home for a week, 6 weeks, then there would be Easter, and so on. So I stayed away.
One room for you.
Sorry?
One room for you with toilet?
No, we shared rooms. There would be 3 in a room, and then when you got to 17, you had your own room. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to my boarding school days, my parents genuinely believed that boarding school would give me opportunities that they hadn't had. That's what they believed. I'm not saying that's true, Robert. I'm just saying that's
Yeah.
what they believed. And can I just say, in many ways, it did. Let's see now. I learned resilience, boundaries, discipline, and a high degree of independence.
Mm-hmm.
But, and here's the but, emotionally, I went there carrying a need to prove myself. I wanted my parents to be proud of me. And this is an interesting one. I wanted them to be proud of me. And when I went to that boarding school, I discovered acting and public speaking and drama. And I loved all that. I loved being on the stage. I loved doing public speaking. I felt it was something I really enjoyed. I could express myself freely. My parents were a bit concerned about this. They wanted me to study the sciences. And I even remember my dad once saying to me, less poncing about on that stage and more focus on your studies. And I still remember that. It's interesting the stuff you remember, isn't it? And
Yeah,
whilst
and
his
you always
intention,
remember just one sentence,
yeah, and it was the poncing about, and I recoiled, and I said, "Well, I do sciences as well, Dad." And his intentions were good. He wanted security for me and success, so I adapted. I
But
pushed
wait a second, please.
Yep.
Security and success for you,
Yeah,
or
for you.
because he was lacking the success and the security?
Oh, that's a really good question, Robert. Maybe both. Yeah, maybe both.
Yeah,
because
you know what I mean?
didn't. Yeah, I do. He never felt totally secure. He never felt his father gave him the best chance in life. Didn't value him because he never got to grammar school. Grammar school was a better school than an ordinary school, and his brother got there and he didn't. So I guess, he wanted for me what he didn't have. He didn't have that security, and he didn't regard himself as highly successful. So I thought he was successful. He wanted me, I suppose parents want their kids to have more than what they had. Does that make sense as well?
Yeah.
So I whilst I continued with my theatre and did my drama and public speaking and so on, I focused on biology and chemistry, and I eventually did a degree in biology and chemistry, which I've never used.
Yeah, that's the funny part of the story. We want to achieve so much, and then we try different ways.
Yeah.
And some of that is not happening for us.
Yeah, that was a really good point, though, what you made, and it's got me thinking about success and security for whom. Yeah, it was for him as much as me.
But it's also the definition of security and success is probably different for everyone. So why should I, as a father, decide what is a success for my child? It's kind of, new perspective.
I agree. And and because, of course, you have to remember there were two parts playing here, although I was the younger one, I was the child, but I played to that need of his and did quite well. I got a degree in biology and chemistry. I must have done something, even though it wasn't really me. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I know collecting achievements, without, the heart, without,
Yes. Yeah.
There are some like interviews.
Yeah.
We do it because some part of me is really wanting to have this interview with you.
Yeah.
Not because I have to, or I am gonna, achieve something or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just my need. And I suppose, I hope it's my real authentic self, having this need. Richard, we can stop the funny part right now and go to the real, real life experience regarding alcohol. How do you see, what would you say, when did alcohol show up in your life?
Yeah. I mean, when I first started drinking, and I liked the sensation and all that, I know I had it under a lot of control because I'd only have a few drinks if I went out to a party or a nightclub or a disco. I didn't drink all the time. I didn't drink after work every day. And in fact, I was very structured. If I did do anything, it had to be not on a school night, where there was a school, school the next day or university. It would tend to be at the weekend. I'd have a few drinks. When I look back, though, even then, when I had a few drinks, and we all know that having a couple of beers or whatever your tipple is, you relax. Yeah. For me, having been this other person, it enabled me to be who I was. When I look back, it became this, and it was intoxicating, not alcohol intoxicating, but in the mind, it was lovely because I would dance when I was in a club. I would be more expressive. I became the life and soul of a party, and I never.
Would you say you were hiding behind alcohol?
Yes. Yeah. Oh God, yes. Yeah. During my 20s and 30s, reasonably controlled. During my 40s, it started to escalate the amount I was drinking. And in my 50s, it went like that. And alcohol, I worked at the career I had at the time. Alcohol and that career went really well together.
Because you were doing what?
It went really well together because I was doing boozy lunches to do deals.
Okay.
Business deals. Yeah. So I would get sponsorship in for our company. We would do this. There would be mergers and acquisitions, and it would all be over a civilized bottle or two of nice wine. Yeah. And because I was earning good money, I had a nice car, when my partner started to say, I think you're drinking too much, I say, no, I can't be. Look, we've got this great place. I'm earning good money. I'm functioning.
Successful.
Correct. But what I wasn't seeing is the quantity of alcohol I was starting to consume more and more and more.
And what about life quality?
Yeah, I mean, I was a happy soul drinking to a point,
Yeah.
So that was good. But then when I started to get, what's the word I want to use here? I was never physically aggressive, but I could become verbally aggressive. I could upset people. I know my partner walked out of restaurants many a time in the latter part of my drinking, what I'll call my drinking career. My partner started, and I used to think, why are they walking out? What have I said? And I'd obviously been horrible, nasty.
And using this term, drinking career, what does it make with you or with the listeners? What is the point of this combination?
It's again a really good question. It's because everything I did, I made sure drink was involved. So I ran a team of people. When I used to do their quarterly appraisals, I'll go, let's go out for lunch. You deserve it. I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for me. I'm being honest here. Let's go out for lunch. So, Robert, you've done really well in this quarter. I'm going to take you out for lunch. Oh, and you're thinking, that's nice. I've done really well. But it was an excuse for me to drink. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Yeah, I understand.
So drinking career. If I had a business meeting with a sponsor and I was raising 250 grand, it was a lot of money, pounds. So I don't know, 300,000, 280,000 euros, if you want to do an equivalent here. I would go, shall we do it over a meal in the evening, or should we do it over lunch? Shall we go? And it was always to a very nice bar with nice crystal glasses. It was all, I loved all that because it made it civilized. It gave it it made, what's the word I'm looking for? It ratified it. It just made it feel it wasn't me just drinking. It was business. It was in a sophisticated restaurant or bar. I worked a lot in London at the time. I went to some lovely places, lovely places. And with sponsors, we then worked with other people, with some famous athletes to come in and do talks at our conferences, And I was mixing with these people. It was work, and I was bringing the money in, but alcohol weaved its way all the way through.
Yeah.
I think I chose a career where I could drink legitimately.
Yeah? Whoa.
Which is really bad.
That is a deep knowledge.
Yeah. That wasn't my
But
knowledge. It was told to me by my sponsor in Alcoholics Anonymous, because I go to Alcoholics Anonymous in the UK.
yeah,
And he said, you do realize that you chose a career where you could drink subconsciously. And I thought, yeah, I did.
yeah, but it's still, you know, for me, it would be a painful even listen to that. And I would actually say, no, not at all. Impossible.
Yeah. Well, I was denying it during the drinking years, the drinking career
Yeah.
years. You know, I was denying it. If anyone told me, I'd be going, that's rubbish. That's not true at all. I'm there to
Yeah.
do business. Just because I have a glass of wine. I mean, we were having bottles of wine
Yeah.
when the deal
Okay.
was done. Yeah. Anyway.
And you see, it's very deep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
subconsciously, there were some decisions throughout your life just because you were going to this direction, alcohol. And what was alcohol doing for you? Could you explain it?
Yeah.
You
Well,
are a
initially,
therapist, you know, there is something
yeah. I
behind
mean,
alcohol.
initially, it was enabling me to be what I needed to be. It gave me a respite from consciously, soberly being this other person. When I had a few drinks, I could kind of loosen up in that role, and it took the pain off. It took the pain away. And it also
For a
made me
time.
feel, for a time. And it also made me feel that I could just talk to anyone on their terms. Yeah.
Mm.
You know,
You told me once that you had a girlfriend just to not be recognized as a gay person.
Yeah.
Could you, you know, probably it's not easy for everyone to understand how was it in 1970s, 1980s.
Yeah. Well, first of all, there is going back to the religious side. It's just, and being gay was something that I just could not comprehend. So it was important for me to have a girlfriend. I did get on with girls, by the way. I didn't have a problem getting a girl to be my girlfriend. It was nice. I'm not being big-headed. I'm just going back years, and they liked me.
But you mean the real relationship? Like you were faking the whole relation?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. The relationships were never, how can I put this? The relationships were never,
it's very difficult. It's very difficult to fake somebody's life.
Oh, and I couldn't. There was I know guys who can, but I never had physical relations with a girlfriend, full sex. Let's just be clear here. Lots of kissing, lots of, touching, but it was never, because I couldn't. I know guys who can. I've done both. Bisexual men obviously can, and women. My partner used to be married to a woman, hence why we have stepchildren, and he had no problem in that area. But it was something that I just couldn't. And that caused more stress. So the girl would finish with me, and then I'd go to another one. I was in a
but
career.
It was also not healthy for the girls.
No, it was not. It was, thank God I didn't marry one of them, and because that would have been worse. I know guys who've done that, and they've had to manage that, and that's really hard. But also in my career at the time, because you've got to remember at the time, besides there was this stigma anyway. There was the advent of HIV and AIDS in the 70s and 80s. So it was regarded as this gay disease, and they deserved it because they're horrible people. So in my career, I pretended to be straight. And when there were functions, I would bring a girl who was a friend with me, even though by then I was living with a guy, if that makes sense as well. Yeah. Can you imagine?
It's
living
hiding all the
lives.
time.
You're living two lives. So you're telling there's your authentic story, which you've just pushed down, and you're telling everyone the story that has to make sense, and you have to follow up that story each week. And it's hard work. Can you imagine your nervous system is, the bandwidth is just like that. So it's no wonder I sought refuge in alcohol.
Yeah, it's easy for you as a therapist to see it, for most of the people it does.
Yeah.
I do not know what they think, but they
Yeah.
think that they are just drinking because they are drinking. They do not see the reason behind drinking.
And it's, I see it in other people who are not gay, other people who have drunk to relax themselves. Well, I'm nothing wrong with alcohol, by the way. I'm not anti-alcohol. My partner has a drink. I can pour them a drink. I don't drink anymore. I haven't drank since I went into rehab in 2020. You know, I that's it. But what I will say is there are lots of reasons deep down why people drink. Some are just because they're born alcoholics. A lot of people, it's because of stuff. Lots of stuff that's happened. Yeah. And it's an escape.
Yeah.
They all, the word I would use is they medicate using alcohol. They use it to medicate themselves as a medicine. Yeah. Yeah. I'm talking about people who drink all the time here, not people who are what I call earthlings, who can just have a couple of glasses and that's it. You know.
What would you mean? What do you mean by stuff? Because I would say it's some kind of experience from the past.
It will be that they never felt good enough as a child.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not blaming parents. They may just have felt that way, that they were different, not gay, just different. Yeah. That things that other people had weren't available to them. Those three areas are quite common with addicts and alcoholics. I work with addicts. I work with alcoholics in my profession. Many, it's unresolved childhood trauma. Yeah. And some people will say, no, it wasn't. Nothing happened. And when I do my hypnosis stuff and they go back, they will go to a scene where there was trauma and they found it. And it was like, oh, I'd forgotten that. I forgot that had happened. Yeah. I forgot that my father. Yeah.
It's a function of the brain that we just forget bad experiences.
Yeah, because the brain wants us to move on the brain wants to take us away from pain all the time. Your brain wants to take us away from, you know this, the brain wants to take us from pain to pleasure, you know, and then you add alcohol into that. Yay.
Yeah, but it's still, you know, it's very difficult for, you know, just a father in Germany.
Yes.
They do not study psychology. They do not study human brain.
No. Well, they don't in
just
England.
Become father.
Yeah, they don't in England. And that's going back to the very part of the beginning of our discussion. You know, it's very hard to be a dad and very hard to be a mum, but very hard to be a dad. Traditionally, dads have been the ones going out to work as well. I mean, I'm not saying mums don't, because your listeners will be going, wait a minute, equality. Of course, absolutely. But what I'm saying is traditionally, and back to the generational virus, the dad is the, you know, the one who goes out to work, has to be strong, can't show emotion. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's all the time today, but generally in the past, has to be resilient, protective, all good things, all good traits. But when they run in overdrive and they pass that on to their sons saying, you have, you know, it's important for you to do it, because they're doing it out of love, by the way, not out of, not out of being nasty, then that passes on and that passes on. And in that mess, sometimes that can occur. There are kids who don't want to play football. They want to play cricket. There are kids who are gay. There are kids who want to become women. There are women who want to become boys. I don't know. There's all of this stuff. And it's like, no. This is what will work. We have a formula and we know this formula works. And then you have this kid who isn't like that, who's different. They might just be different because they don't want to go to university. They want to do an apprenticeship. Yeah. They don't want to be a scientist. They want to be a carpenter. Yeah. They don't want to be a lawyer or a doctor. They want to become an actor.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everything happens.
Yeah, it does.
Daily life.
Yeah.
Richard, a few short questions.
Yes.
One thing every son needs to hear from his father.
Yeah.
What is the
biggest
biggest need
now you're really
of a
pushing
son?
me here. What is one thing? Right. I would say one thing every son wants to hear from their father or needs from their father.
It's sometimes it's both. that the father needs to say it, or sometimes it's just a need that the father has to cover somehow.
Yeah, I think for me it surrounds this unconditional love, because that creates psychological safety. So always be honest with them. And even if it is saying, look, I want you to do this because I think it's good for you. Yeah. But what is it you want? Does that make sense? Ask the child. Children aren't stupid. Ask them. Is this something you want? Yeah.
Now we have something verbal you can say to your child. Thank you so much.
Just to ask the child, I think this will be good. What do you think? And if the kid goes, yeah, Dad, the son, yeah, or the daughter says to the father, that's fantastic, love it, and it's congruent, brilliant. You know, the body language, the words, and the tone. Yeah.
What is the one lesson from your children, that's something that you've learned and you didn't know before?
Let me think about that. That's again, I like that. One thing I've learned, one lesson that I've got from my children. Do you know what? For my grandchildren and stepchildren, it is to be honest with them. And sometimes that honesty, you have to be careful how you express that honesty. But sometimes, say, be honest with them, give them options if it's appropriate, as long as it's not breaking safety or boundaries. But to be honest, because children are, before they feel they have to fib or lie, are honest. They are themselves. When a baby's born, Robert, it looks at you and it's being honest. It doesn't know how to lie. We learn to lie for lots of other things, fib to get our way and all that. But generally, when we're born as honest children, we're born with a lot of confidence. That's why we learn to walk. We fall over. When we fall over, we don't go, bugger this, I'm going back to the pram. We actually keep trying. You see that with children. They get up, they toddle around. But that honesty, going back to the question, being honest with, say, express it in a considerate way, that honesty.
What is about one belief, your belief, that changed after your parenting time? Becoming father, stepfather.
Yeah, one belief. A big belief for me is, I'll tell you what, you never stop learning. You learn from your children as much as they learn from you. You never stop learning.
Yeah. That is a good one. And it's very difficult one, I'd say.
It is, because we all have our fixed, quite rightly, the brain's going, well, wait a minute, this is the process for this. This is how we do this. But sometimes the kid will go, but Dad, or in my case, Grandpa, why don't we do it that way round? And I'll look and go, do you know what? Why don't we? And that's hard.
It's my daughter. She's 4. And she wanted today to have, chocolate drink out of a bowl.
Yeah, there you go.
And she just wanted to have, some cornflakes. And then she wanted to have 2 bowls. And I was just, I didn't understand at the beginning. And then she wanted me to have a chocolate in it. And I'd say, why not? If you want to have it. And, today it's Sunday, I have time. Why not? But it's so painful for me just to take a seat and just listen to my child and just to, see that situation as a normal situation. 2 bowls for cornflakes.
Yeah. It's hard. It's really hard. And it gets hard when they say something and you think, well, no, I don't believe that's true. But what is truth? Truth is created by people with power, and we believe a truth. Some of things have to be truth to keep us safe. But who are we to decide,
Yeah, and it's difficult, to stop being this knowledgeable parent. And it's difficult to, just to stay, the power.
One of the things I've observed with my stepdaughter, and she's got this down to a T, I've never heard her raise her voice. The kids aren't spoiled. They're really good. They love being out. They're good. what she does is, even when they're having a tantrum, you know, when one of them was 3 years old, you know, and they do, because they're getting frustrated. She would, you know, okay. She'd say to him, you know, okay, let's, you know, she goes, right. I understand. You want to do this. Yes, I want to do this, you know. And then she says, and we can. I'm not saying you can't.
Yeah.
Would it be all right if we just did this first? And I promise you, and she just says it very gently, we will do this. We need to sort your bedroom out. We need to do this. I know you want to go and blah, blah, you know, I'm giving you a simple example. What I've noticed is she engages with them at their level, using their words a bit, you know, but she softens her voice, but she asks open questions.
Yeah.
That's teaching a child.
That's teaching we all need to learn.
Yeah.
Because again, we didn't learn it at school.
Clearly there are sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes, you know, you've got to shout because they're about to run across a road. You're not going to get into what might happen? You know, come here. Of course. I'm not saying we don't become directive. Have to, to protect, yeah. But she will do things to calm them so that they can think. And if they refuse to calm, she says, well, we're not going. She'll say it very softly, and you can scream all you like. We're not going till you and I, she's kind of saying, till you and I can have a chat. Yeah. But I've noticed that those kids are they're very well children. I'm not talking just physically well and academically bright, which they are. They are here's the word, they're happy.
Yeah. Authentic. Authentic children. It's it's difficult to create that environment for the children that they can be themselves. I know what you mean. It's very important to allow the children. You can just shout, cry, whatever you want to do, or punch the pillows, whatever.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I'm not saying any of this is easy, and I'm not suggesting they go around smashing glasses, because you will stop them, or smashing up your home. I'm not one of these people who believes a kid can do all of that. Of course they can't. What I'm saying is, most of the time there's an opportunity for a little bit of, like you did this morning with your daughter. Okay, all right, we'll have the 2 bowls.
Why not?
Richard,
you were, you did a lot in your professional life. And I suppose you have some, strong habits. What would you say is a habit that makes a father a better father?
I know I've said this before about creating psychological safety, but you can only do that if you build in time to listen to understand, not listen to respond all the time. Listen to respond is, here's my response. Listen to understand is, oh, why do you want the 2 bowls?
Yeah.
I just want to. Okay, what does it do? Oh, it just thought it'd be fun. Or it might be, oh, I saw so-and-so do it, and I like, I don't know. That's not easy. We can't do listen to understand all the time, even at work, because our brains wouldn't be able to cope. But if we can build that into any relationship, particularly a relationship between a parent or father or parent and child, listening to understand goes a long way, because here's the generational virus in a positive way, they'll start doing that. They'll come to you and go,
I hope
as they get older, they'll go, Dad, I know you said no, but can I understand why you feel so strongly about me not wearing this outfit or whatever it is? Listen to understand. Rather than, I want to wear it. No, you can't. I want to wear it. No, you can't. Your daughter will get to an age where she wants to go out and wear something that you may not approve of.
Yeah. So one thing most of the fathers worry too much about. What would it be? One thing the fathers worry too much about.
They worry too much, particularly today, about the safety of their children. And I understand why, but that worry can
You mean online safety? or
Well,
outside
they don't worry enough
safely?
about that, but certainly they worry if their kids go out. And I think I see that they worry too much about that. They need to have a little bit more faith in that society isn't all evil. Because I grew up and we were out from God knows whatever time to whatever time, and I know you can't protect your children 100% of the time. Does that make sense? You can only do the best you can and educate them to stay away from strange people and all the rest of it. But I really think that worry has caused kids to then, I heard like parents saying, well, they're fine, they're in the house now, I know what they're doing. And I said, no, you don't. They're up in their room on social media now. You don't know who they're talking to. There's a greater chance now of meeting some bloody deviant sorry, I shouldn't use that word, but they are on social media than there is for them going out into the park to play football when they're 8 or 9. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And you never know what's happening online.
No, but
it's very difficult.
The worry and the protection, because the poor fathers now are hearing all this bad news all the time. You don't hear the good news, and it's 24/7. So they're saying, I've got to keep this child here, and I think, I'm not saying all parents, but I think that is causing then the kids, it's stunting their development, because they've got to go out, build dens, be creative,
Yeah, wonderful. So, Richard, to, find the last question. What would be your message, to the parents? What would you like to share with the parents listening to our podcast? What is the core message of your particular story of your life experience?
Yeah. Find out what really makes them tick, what makes them, what excites your child. Not the obvious stuff, toys and things like that, the things they really love doing and being. I think if you get that, you're onto a winner. So if their passion is engineering, building, great. If it's medicine, great. If it's they want to be set up a street food stall, that's okay too.
Yeah, and it should be equal. Everything should be equal.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a university way of feeling.
Find out what it is they love to do other than lie in bed or listen to music. I'm talking about things that they may want to become. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then nurture it. Don't put a barrier up. Even if you feel you're doing it to protect them.
Richard, thank you for your precious time. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for
my pleasure.
Your insights from your now profession, therapist.
Thank you.